In the quiet, picturesque town of Pine Hill, the gruesome murder of Jennifer Johnson sent shockwaves through the community. What appeared to be a peaceful, close-knit suburban enclave was shattered by a crime of passion and betrayal that revealed the dark underbelly of seemingly idyllic lives. The lives of two couples, Daniel and Linda Garner, and Mark and Jennifer Johnson, intertwined in ways that would lead to obsession, deceit, and ultimately murder. Daniel Garner was a respected architect, known for his charming demeanor and seemingly perfect marriage to Linda, a dedicated school teacher. Mark Johnson, a successful financial advisor, and his wife, Jennifer, were the Garners' closest friends. The two couples shared more than just neighborhood barbecues and weekend getaways. They also engaged in a consensual wife-swapping arrangement that initially brought excitement and novelty to their lives. However, beneath the surface of this unconventional lifestyle, dangerous emotions were brewing. Daniel's fascination with Jennifer grew into an all-consuming obsession, one that Linda, his wife, was painfully aware of. Jennifer, sensing the intensity of Daniel's feelings, decided to put an end to the arrangement, not realizing the deadly consequences her decision would provoke. Daniel and Linda Garner had been married for 10 years. From the outside, their marriage appeared to be a model of stability and happiness. Daniel was a successful architect, known for his innovative designs and charismatic personality. Linda, a third-grade teacher, was beloved by her students and respected by her colleagues. They lived in a charming house on Maple Street, surrounded by a well-tended garden that Linda took great pride in. Mark and Jennifer Johnson moved to Pine Hill 5 years ago and quickly became friends with the Garners. Mark, an outgoing and affable financial advisor, was always the life of the party. Jennifer, with her striking beauty and magnetic personality, was equally popular. The Johnsons' arrival brought a new dynamic to the neighborhood, and their friendship with the Garners blossomed over shared interests and mutual respect. The idea of wife-swapping was first brought up during a dinner party at the Garners' home. Fueled by wine and a sense of adventure, the conversation turned to the topic of open relationships. To everyone's surprise, the concept was met with curiosity rather than shock. Over the next few weeks, the idea was discussed more seriously, with all parties agreeing to boundaries and rules to ensure their primary relationships remained intact. The first encounter was awkward but exciting. Daniel and Jennifer, and Mark and Linda exchanged partners for the night. It was a thrilling yet nerve-wracking experience, but one that left them eager for more. What started as a once-in-a-while experiment soon became a regular part of their lives, adding a spark to both marriages. Initially, the arrangements seemed to work well. Both couples appeared happier and more connected. They maintained their social activities, often hosting joint parties and going on vacations together. Their secret was carefully guarded, discussed only within the confines of their homes or during private gatherings. The novelty of the arrangement brought a sense of exhilaration, and for a while, it seemed like they had found the perfect balance. However, as the months passed, subtle changes began to surface, particularly in Daniel's behavior. He started to show an unusual amount of interest in Jennifer, often finding reasons to spend time alone with her. Linda noticed his increasing preoccupation, but chose to ignore it, hoping it was just a phase. Mark, too, seemed oblivious to the growing tension. Unbeknownst to the others, Daniel's fascination with Jennifer was turning into something deeper and more troubling. He found himself thinking about her constantly, replaying their encounters in his mind and craving more time with her. What had started as a harmless adventure was slowly morphing into an obsession that would have devastating consequences for all involved. Daniel's fascination with Jennifer was no longer just a thrill. It had evolved into an all-consuming obsession. He thought about her incessantly, his mind wandering to their encounters during work meetings and family dinners. His architectural projects, once his passion, now seemed secondary to his desire for Jennifer. He started to find ways to be near her, volunteering to help with tasks Mark usually handled, or inviting the Johnsons over more frequently. Linda began to notice the change in her husband. At first, she attributed it to the excitement of their new lifestyle, but soon it became clear that Daniel's interest in Jennifer went beyond their agreement. He became irritable and distant when they weren't with the Johnsons, and his conversations often veered towards Jennifer's likes and dislikes, her quirks and habits. One evening, while cleaning up after a dinner party, Linda confronted Daniel. "Daniel, what's going on with you? You seem different, obsessed even," Linda said, her voice tinged with concern and frustration. Daniel looked up from the dishes, his eyes filled with a mix of anger and guilt. "You're just being paranoid, Linda. There's nothing wrong. Daniel, you barely talk to me anymore. All you do is think about Jennifer," Linda snapped, tears welling up in her eyes. Daniel's reaction was defensive, dismissing her concerns as jealousy. "You're overreacting. It's just a phase." Linda, not wanting to disrupt the delicate balance they had established, let it go but kept a closer eye on him. Her suspicions grew when she found him staring at Jennifer during gatherings, his gaze lingering longer than necessary. Jennifer, too, began to sense Daniel's growing obsession. Initially flattered by his attention, she soon found it uncomfortable. His touches became more possessive, his words more intimate than appropriate. She discussed her discomfort with Mark, who brushed it off, believing Daniel was just more expressive in his affections. Mark's nonchalance left Jennifer feeling isolated in her concerns. The turning point came during a weekend trip to a lakeside cabin. The couples had planned the getaway to reconnect and enjoy some time away from their routine. However, the trip only served to highlight Daniel's fixation. He monopolized Jennifer's time, insisting on taking her out on the lake alone, leaving Mark and Linda behind. The tension was palpable, and Jennifer's attempts to distance herself were met with subtle resistance from Daniel. One night, while sitting by the fire, Daniel made a comment that crossed the line. "You know, Jennifer, we could leave all of this behind. Just you and me, start fresh," he said, his voice low and intense. Jennifer, shocked and unsettled, excused herself and went to bed early. Linda, who had overheard the conversation, confronted Daniel again. "This needs to stop, Daniel. You're ruining everything," Linda whispered harshly, her eyes filled with fear. I can't help it, Linda. I love her," Daniel confessed, his voice trembling. Linda's frustration grew as she realized the extent of Daniel's obsession. She loved her husband, but was increasingly aware that his infatuation with Jennifer could destroy their marriage and their friendship with the Johnsons. Despite her efforts to intervene, Daniel's behavior only became more erratic. He started to follow Jennifer outside of their arranged meetings, showing up at her yoga classes, and even appearing at her workplace under the guise of casual visits. Jennifer's unease turned to fear. She confided in a close friend who advised her to distance herself from Daniel as much as possible. Determined to take control, Jennifer decided to end the arrangement altogether. She hoped that by doing so, Daniel would return to his senses and they could all move on from this chapter without causing further harm. One evening, while Mark was away on a business trip, Daniel showed up at the Johnsons' house unannounced. Jennifer was taken aback, but let him in, hoping to avoid a scene. They sat in the living room, the air thick with unspoken tension. Daniel confessed his feelings for her, speaking of a future where they could be together openly. Jennifer, horrified, tried to reason with him, explaining that their arrangement was never meant to be more than a temporary excitement. "Daniel, this has to stop. It's over. You need to respect my boundaries and my marriage," Jennifer said firmly, her voice shaking with emotion. Daniel, visibly shaken, tried to persuade her to reconsider, but Jennifer stood her ground. Over the next few days, Jennifer avoided Daniel, hoping he would come to his senses. She confided in Linda, who listened with a heavy heart. Linda knew her husband's obsession had gone too far, and while she wanted to support Jennifer, she also felt a twisted loyalty to Daniel. "I'll talk to him, Jennifer. I'll make him understand," Linda promised, her voice filled with determination. However, Daniel's obsession only deepened. He started showing up at Jennifer's work, waiting for her after hours, and leaving her messages expressing his undying love. Jennifer, feeling increasingly unsafe, decided to confront him one last time, hoping to make him understand the gravity of his actions. They met at a secluded park, away from prying eyes. Jennifer reiterated that their arrangement was over and that his behavior was unacceptable. She pleaded with him to let go and move on. "Daniel, please, this has to end. You're scaring me," Jennifer said, her eyes filled with desperation. Daniel, unable to accept her rejection, grew desperate. He accused her of leading him on and playing with his emotions. "You can't just walk away from this, Jennifer. We were meant to be together," Daniel insisted, his voice rising with intensity. Jennifer, maintaining her composure, insisted that they part ways and return to their respective marriages. Jennifer's confrontation with Daniel in the park marked a turning point. She became increasingly anxious and began to see him as a potential threat to her safety. She confided in Mark about the gravity of the situation. Mark, finally realizing the severity of Daniel's obsession, decided to take matters into his own hands. That night, Mark called Daniel and arranged to meet him at a local bar. The atmosphere was tense as the two men sat down, each nursing a drink. "Daniel, this has to stop," Mark began, his voice steady but firm. "Jennifer is my wife. You need to respect our marriage and our boundaries." Daniel, his eyes dark and intense, took a sip of his drink before responding. "Mark, you don't understand. She and I have a connection. Something real." "Whatever connection you think you have, it ends now," Mark replied, his voice rising. "If you don't back off, I'll have no choice but to involve the authorities." Daniel's expression hardened. "You think you can just threaten me and I'll go away? You have no idea how deep this runs." Mark leaned in, his tone menacing. "Consider this your final warning, Daniel. Stay away from Jennifer, or I'll make sure you regret it." The confrontation left Daniel seething with rage. His obsession had clouded his judgment, and now he felt cornered and betrayed by those he considered friends. His mind raced with thoughts of revenge and desperation. The tension in Pine Hill reached a boiling point. Jennifer, feeling the weight of Daniel's obsession, decided to take a leave of absence from work. She and Mark contemplated moving to a different town, hoping distance would help sever Daniel's unhealthy attachment. Linda, caught between her love for Daniel and her loyalty to Jennifer, found herself in an increasingly precarious position. She tried to support her husband while also urging him to seek help. One evening, she sat him down for a heart-to-heart conversation. "Daniel, this isn't healthy. You need to let go of Jennifer. It's tearing us apart," Linda pleaded, her eyes filled with tears. Daniel, staring blankly at the floor, finally looked up. "I know, Linda. I know it's wrong, but I can't help how I feel. You need to see someone. Talk to a therapist. This obsession is destroying you," Linda insisted, her voice trembling. Reluctantly, Daniel agreed to seek professional help, but deep down, he knew that his feelings for Jennifer were too deeply ingrained to simply disappear. Despite his promises to seek help, Daniel's obsession continued to fester. One stormy night, unable to contain his turmoil any longer, he drove to the Johnsons' house. The rain pounded on the windshield as he approached, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Inside, Jennifer and Mark were preparing for bed when they heard a knock at the door. Jennifer's heart sank as she recognized Daniel's silhouette through the frosted glass. Mark, sensing the danger, told Jennifer to stay upstairs. Mark opened the door, his face a mask of anger. "Daniel, what the hell are you doing here?" "I need to talk to Jennifer," Daniel demanded, his voice shaky but determined. "You're not coming in. Leave now, before I call the police," Mark threatened, stepping outside to confront Daniel. The argument escalated quickly. Daniel, in a fit of rage and desperation, pushed past Mark and stormed into the house. Jennifer, hearing the commotion, rushed downstairs to find the two men grappling in the hallway. "Stop it, both of you," Jennifer screamed, trying to separate them. In the struggle, Daniel lashed out wildly, and in the chaos, Mark was thrown against the edge of a table, hitting his head with a sickening thud. He collapsed unconscious, blood pooling around him. Jennifer, horrified, turned to Daniel. "What have you done?" Realizing the gravity of his actions, Daniel stood frozen, his mind unable to process what had just happened. Jennifer, shaking with fear, reached for her phone to call 911. The police arrived quickly, the scene a blur of flashing lights and hurried voices. Daniel was taken into custody, his face a picture of shock and disbelief. Mark was rushed to the hospital, where doctors worked tirelessly to save him. Linda, upon hearing the news, felt her world crumble. The man she loved had been consumed by an obsession that led to violence and betrayal. She stood by him, but the strain on their marriage was irreversible. Jennifer, traumatized by the night's events, struggled to regain a sense of normalcy. Mark eventually recovered, but the physical and emotional scars remained. The Johnsons decided to leave Pine Hill, hoping to rebuild their lives far from the memories of their shattered friendships. Daniel faced charges of assault and was ordered to undergo psychiatric evaluation. His obsession, which had once seemed a thrilling adventure, had ultimately led to his downfall. Linda, though heartbroken, knew she had to move on for her own sake. The once idyllic town of Pine Hill was left to grapple with the aftermath of the hidden obsession that had torn apart two families. The lessons learned were harsh but necessary, a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked desires and the fragile nature of human relationships. Years later, Pine Hill slowly returned to its peaceful state, but the shadows of the past lingered. The story of Daniel, Linda, Mark, and Jennifer became a cautionary tale whispered among the townsfolk. The scars of the past served as a reminder of the complexities of human emotions and the fine line between passion and obsession. Daniel, having served his time and undergone extensive therapy, moved to a new town, seeking to rebuild his life. Linda, though she never truly forgave him, found solace in her work and the support of her friends. The Johnsons, now living in a different state, found a new beginning and gradually healed from the trauma they had endured. Life in Pine Hill continued, but the events that transpired served as a constant reminder that beneath the surface of even the most picturesque towns, there could lie secrets capable of destroying lives.